Okay, today we're going to be learning how to make this string design, a single snowflake card. This is what it looks like from the front when it's all done, and this is what it's going to look like from the back. So you should have in your bag a little kit that includes a needle, what the final project is going to look like, and the kit with both the card and the thread attached. Anytime you take off your needle from the little piece of paper and you use it, remember to keep the piece of paper, because when you're done with this project, you're going to put the needle right back where it came from and use it later on, or maybe you already have, for your embroidery as well. It's going to be the same needle for both. So let's go ahead and take the needle out and get the needle threaded. So I'm going to unwrap mine, or slide it off even. And in your bag, you also have some handy dandy little needle threaders, which are really just that piece of paper there. Remember from the other video that if you fold that piece of paper in half and open it up like a book, place the thread in the book and close it up again with it right down there in the binding, and take those two little ends there and slip both of those through the needle, the eye of the needle there. Wiggle them through, make sure both of them go through, and then wiggle the whole piece of paper with the thread through, like that, pulling, pulling, pulling till one end is through. At that point you can take the little piece of paper off and pull the rest of it through. Now, you're going to want one end just a little bit longer than the other. Oh, and when I pulled mine, it got a little bit of a knot in it. So let's see if I can take that out real quick. Dun, 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 dun. There we go. When you pull the ends through, you're going to want one of them a little bit longer than the other. Maybe about like that. So there's the end of one, and there's the end of the other. Okay, we are going to start not on the front of the card actually, but opening the card up, and we're going to lay down that longer end of the thread, and we're going to actually tape it to the inside there. I'm going to make sure that we don't put any tape going over the holes. And you probably have a normal piece of tape, but for some reason all I've got is a piece of gold shiny tape, so that's what I'm going to use. Okay, tape that down right there. Now looking at this cross, we're going to think of this in terms of quarters. Okay, and we're going to work 1 quarter at a time. First I'm going to work this quarter down here, then next I'll work that quarter opposite from it, and then I'll go to the other two. But first let's look at this quarter down here. So I'm going to go to the furthest point out here, the furthest hole, and go ahead and poke my needle right through there and see where I'm coming up at the furthest hole from the center. And I gently pull until it's nice and tight, and if it starts to get a little knotty like that, knotty thread, I'm going to just gently unwrap it and bring it through. Okay, now I don't want to pull too tight on these, just enough so that it's taut. Now I'm at the farthest end here, but I'm actually going to be looking over on this quarter. So if I'm at 12 o'clock, I'm going to be going backwards in time. And I'm going to be going not to the farthest one, but actually the closest one to the center from there. So I started at one of the farthest ones, but I'm going to go to the closest one. And I'm going to go back down through the closest one. and pull it taut, but not so tight that it'll buckle the paper up. Okay, so if I went down here, anywhere you go down, you're going to come up in the same arm. So if I went down in this arm, I'm also going to come up in this arm, and I'm going to come up in the one right next to it. So you can do a couple different things. You can kind of move your needle around underneath the paper until, oh, I found it. Yeah, and sometimes you might move your needle around and find that you come up in the wrong one, so you'd come back over and just find it. Or you can turn your paper over and look where you came from and go into the one right next to it coming up. So I came up in the one right next to the one I had just done. I'm now going to be looking back to the arm I came from and going to the next one closer to the one that's already done there. So I'm going to go down right next to the one over here in the first arm that I was at. Pulling through until it's taut, but not too tight. And again, I'm in this arm now, so I'm going to stay in this arm. I went down to that arm, so I'm going to come up back through that arm in the one that's right next to it. So I can move my needle around underneath until I find it, or I can turn it over, look where I came from, and go right back down into the one next to it. Remember, I'm still staying all in this quarter over here. So I'm coming up. And do you see how both of them are now coming through? And even if I pull the other one, well, it's right at the end there. That's getting a little close. So what I'm going to do is stretch my needle out a little bit and pull on it till that end gets a little shorter. Okay, so I came up through the one that was right next to it. Now I'm going to look down here and keep heading over in this corner. Always staying right next to the ones that are already done. I went down in this arm, so I'm going to come up through the same arm. Always come up through the same arm you went down in. I'm going to turn it over, find out where I came up, go right up next to it. Came up. If I'm coming up, that means I'm ready to go over to the back to the other arm. So find the one that's right next to the one that's been done, go down. Wherever you go down, you come up in the same arm. So I'm going to aim for that guy right there. Find out where I am, come right back through. Ooh, that one's a little sticky. I just have to find a little opening. There it is. Okay. Now this whole time, this is the arm I started out way out here, and I've been moving closer to the center. And this is the arm where I started at the center, and I've been moving out towards the edge. So I came up here, I'm going to keep moving out to the edge here. Wherever you go down, you're going to look in the same arm to come right back up. Right just over. Okay, and I've made it to the last one on that arm, and the last one on this arm. That's the pattern. We're going to be doing that pattern 3 more times until we get all the corners done. So I did this corner over here. Now I'm going to go opposite. Do you see how right now that last one's kind of looking a little slump, right? That could be tightened up. So I'm just going to pull on the back a little bit tighter so it's not slumpy at all. So now I'm looking over to this corner, but I'm still coming out from the inside. So I'm going to turn it over. And remember, I was in this corner in here, so we're going to be looking at this corner now. And I'm going to go and start actually very close to the center, just 1 over from where I came out. Now this one is the one that's close to the center. and I'm looking at this corner, so I need to find down at 6 o'clock the farthest away one to aim for. So I'm going to bring it and go right in the farthest away, right at 6 o'clock. Now remember, I went down here, so I'm going to come up on the same arm right next to it. It's almost kind of hiding down there, isn't it? So I'll turn it over again and go right next to it. I came up here. Now I'm going to head down, and the one right next to this one, moving towards 3 o'clock over here. Wherever you go down, whichever arm you go down in, you come up in the same arm, right next to it. Came up. And remember, you're pulling taut, but not too tight. I came up here, and I'm going to look for the next one moving towards the center on this arm. Whichever arm you go down in, you always come up in the same arm. This one's getting closer to the center, and that one's getting closer to the outside again. Okay, I came up here, going down there. See that little knot that started arising? Whenever you get the beginnings of a little knot, the best thing to do is just think, I'm not going to pull it. I'm not going to keep tugging and tugging. You just have to kind of gently take a look at it, see what's going on, and start really gently pulling apart any of those little loops that you see. So just gently pulling apart. That looks like it did it, maybe. Yeah, pulling apart nice and gentle, and then pulling through all the way. Now, my ends are getting really close to each other. If I keep going like that, it's going to start being a doubled thread. So I want to, again, take the needle, take the end of it. Can't quite see the whole thing, but here's my needle, and I'm just going to pull on the needle a little bit, and that end gets shorter. Now it's nowhere near. Okay, we came up from this arm, so we're going to go, or we went down in this arm, so we're going to come up from this arm too. Getting very close to the end of this corner. Pulling it through, and then going over to the other side. I went down in this arm, so I'm going to come up in this arm. I'm in the very last hole of this one, coming up, and the very last hole of this one, going down. Whoops-a-daisy, it got caught on the corner. So if that happens, just nudge it off and pull it tight. Okay, so we've got 2 full quarters done. Now we have to attend to the other 2, but there are no more empty holes. That means we're going to be doubling up sometimes, actually, all the time. And right now, this is the only time when you're actually going to end up with a long thread on the back. You see this one long thread on the back here? So if I'm coming out here on the back at 3 o'clock, I'm going to bring my thread all the way down, and I'm going to aim for this hole, actually. So 6 o'clock down here. It actually looks like 12 o'clock up here. Okay, so I'm coming out of the very last hole on this arm. That's actually right where we started. And instead of going over here like we did at the beginning, I'm going to focus on this quadrant. So I came up at the last. That means I'm looking for the first on this arm, the one closest to the center. And I'm going to go right down in, right where the other thread is coming up, so that they end up actually sharing that hole. Just pulling very gently watching for the starts of any knots. I went down in this arm, so I'm going to come up in this arm. The one right next to it. Okay. I came up here and I'm going to aim for, now let's see, it gets a little tricky because the yarn starts covering up all the holes. But I know I came out of that last hole there, right, that very first time, and now I'm going to aim for the one right next to it. Down just one hole. Okay, went down in this arm, so I'm going to come up in this arm as well. Now it starts to look a little funky because we're actually have to make sure that you're going right into the next hole and you are sharing those with other threads. Okay, so I'm moving down here and over there. I came up here, I'm going to aim for the next one over here. Whoops, did it again. Flip. Okay. Remember, I'm moving out on this one. And I'm moving in on this one. I went down on this arm, so I'm going to come up on this arm. If you're not sure you're headed into the right one, even before you pull your needle through, you can turn it over and check. Is that the one right down from where I was? Yeah, it is. So that's the right one. And I'm headed out even farther. I'm almost there to the end of these arms. I went down there, so I'm going to try to come out through that hole. The very end there. And again, my thread is getting a little close, so I'm just going to give a little tug on the string. And remember, on my very last one here, I still need to go over to my last one here. And go down through. It always wants to do that. Okay, now we've got 3 quadrants done, and we've only got one left, but my yarn is coming from the back, so I need to figure out where I'm headed. If I went down here, I'm actually going to try to come in right next to it. So I came out here, and I'm going to come out right next to it. Come up. There it is. And right now I'm very close to the center on this arm, so I'm going to head for the farthest away one on this arm that we haven't done because I'm working with this last quadrant. All the way down to the farthest away one. Okay, I went down here, so I'm going to try to come up right on the next one. Coming through here, heading back out on the very next one. Oh, that does get a little tight when there are 2 strings sharing the same hole. So just gently tug it through. If anything feels like you really have to tug on it, that means there might be the beginning of a knot on the other side. So instead of just yanking it through, go ahead and take a look, turn it around. Does it need to have a little gentle reminder not to knot? Okay, I came out here. I'm going to head to the next one over here. I went down in this arm, so I'm coming up in this arm too. Pulling that nice and taut, so nothing's too slouchy. Came out here, gonna head down. Anytime you go down in an arm, you come up in the exact same arm. So I'm aiming for that guy. Very next one over. Okay, bringing it over here. We're almost there. I went down in this arm, so I'm going to come up in this arm. Aiming for that little guy that's almost covered up, but he's there. Came out here, had to adjust the next one over. Came out here and headed down. Which one hasn't been gone through yet from this angle? That one's been gone through, so that's the next one. Oh wait, just kidding. That's the next one. I'm moving closer to the center with this. Oh, see that little knot wanting to start? I'm not going to just tug my way through and do it by force. I could even use my needle. Hey, what's going on there? Just gently figure it out, what needs to be pulled, in just a gentle way to get that knot to come undone. There we go. I went down in this arm, so I'm going to come up in this arm. And hey, I'm at the closest one to the center on this one, and I'm at the farthest one away from the center on this arm. And that, going through that one, is our very last stitch. And there we have the finished design, but we've still got our needle attached. So on the back side, you will go ahead and snip yours right about there. I'm not going to snip mine because I still need to do this over again. You are going to snip yours right there and bring another piece of tape. Don't snip it too close because we don't want it coming out. And place another piece of tape on the end there. And there you have your finished card on both sides. Okay, I hope you enjoy. Remember that you can slow down these YouTube videos if you look for video speed in the settings. So if you want to watch this back over again and slow it down maybe half as slow, you could actually get a slower version of it.